Welcome back to Uncharted X. This is Ben, and I hope you're all doing well. This video is a recent Swapcast and conversation with my good friends Kyle and Russ Allen of the Brothers of the Serpent Podcast, getting into all of the details around the vase scan project that I've been a part of this year. If you're looking to hear more detail and discussion around these remarkable artifacts and their recently uncovered and entirely astonishing attributes, then you're likely going to enjoy this conversation. Before we get started, a couple of channel updates, so skip forward a couple minutes or use the chapters below if you want to get straight into the discussion. Firstly, I'm very happy to say that the 5th season of Gaia's Ancient Civilizations show is available for streaming, and that I was a part of it. This season gets into the ancient legends of the lost civilizations of Mu and Atlantis, and how the cataclysmic origin stories found from all around the world, when looked at through the lens of recent scientific discoveries like those around the Younger Dryas, are revealing the truth behind these stories. Here's a clip from the show.
And around that 12,800, 900 year boundary, we find something called the Younger Dryas layer. And we find this layer all around the world, in areas from North America to the tip of South America in Chile. We also find the Younger Dryas boundaries in South Africa, as well as in Europe. In fact, most of these indicators, at least in the early days of this work, came from archaeological sites in North America, the Clovis sites that go back to around 13,000 years ago. So it's a very well-defined strata layer that we see in the ground that we can define to specific dates. And this consists of a black matte layer, and just below that we also find what we would term impact proxies. Things like shock-synthesized nanodiamonds, magnetic spherules, large quantities of extraterrestrial platinum and iridium metal groups. These proxies are really only formed in the extremely high temperature conditions that occur during cosmic airbursts and cosmic impacts.
If you're interested in checking out the full season of Ancient Civ 5, signing up at Gaia is an excellent way to help out the Uncharted X channel and to get access to tons of great content on the Gaia network. My affiliate link for a Gaia membership is below in the description and in the comments, as is the link for a special offer for a free 7-day trial if you want to check it out before committing. In other channel news, I've started publishing live stream highlight videos on my second channel, Uncharted X Live. These are the good bits from my regular live streams, unscripted, live content, typically looking at raw footage from various locations and getting into all sorts of topics and discussions, even addressing some of the skirps and critics if you want to hear that sort of thing. Check it all out on my other channel, Uncharted X Live. The link to that is below. I'd love your subscription over on that channel, and please do hit the bell to get notified for new uploads. I hope to have a couple of these coming out every week. If you want to catch my actual live streams, jump in my Discord or follow me on social media for notifications. Again, the links are all below. Lastly, I'm happy to say that I'll be speaking at the Eclipse at the Canyon event next year, April 6th to 9th, in Utopia, Texas. This is really going to be a lot of fun. It's an astronomical event, an ancient mystery conference, and outdoor camping music festival all rolled up into one. The totality of the solar eclipse will be right overhead during the event, and there'll be a bunch of great speakers and lots of live bands, including $50 Dynasty, over 3 nights of camping. If that sounds good to you and you're interested in attending, all of the details for Eclipse at the Canyon are on the Eventbrite page, linked below. Now, on to the discussion, and I hope you enjoy the video.
And we are joined by Ben from Uncharted X. Well, I guess he just told us that he's not an actual podcaster.
He's a YouTuber.
He's a YouTuber.
Yes, you guys are the podcasters.
We're the podcaster, but you
You're
have a
professional
podcast.
podcasters. Technically, yes. I guess I do.
Yeah. When's the next episode, bro? I refresh my feed, my Uncharted X feed every day.
Yeah, from the last episode that was like a year ago.
Yeah,
yes,
every day.
Well, I am book. We've been talking about this. I'm booking Kyle. I want you guys one-on-one on these podcasts because I've got shit to say, and I want an audience to say it with. And I think Kyle can get on board with me, talking mad shit about a few things. So
Yeah.
I'm in.
Good.
I'm in.
Yeah, I can't wait to listen to
It's
this.
going to happen. It's gonna
New
happen.
podcast on the Uncharted X feed that I've been refreshing every day for a year.
It's gonna be
I'm
me,
stoked
bro.
to hear that you got a special guest coming on.
I do. It'll be episode 30, I believe. Yeah. What are you guys up to? Like
All right.
6 million? 600? 600? I don't even know.
We just passed. We did episode 301
301.
recently.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, I
so
remember.
now we're at, what is this? This is episode 306 right here.
306 minus
Yeah.
1, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, you
so
were-
it'll be 305 episodes. Episode number 306.
I do like
Yeah.
your persistent doggedness in sticking to the we don't celebrate except it's not 200, it's 201.
No,
Yeah.
it's
That's
201.
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's 201 is the actual 200th episode.
That's right.
So, yeah. Longest running gag joke
Yep.
in podcasting.
It's
probably.
fantastic.
6 years.
Well, when you make a huge mistake in episode 1, you're kind of stuck forever after that.
It's now written in stone.
That's
You
right.
can no longer do the first episode. That's it.
So, you've been doing all kinds of stuff since the last time we had you on. You were back in Egypt. You've been working on this vase stuff, which is fantastic. Like, if anyone hasn't seen the recent Uncharted X videos on the vases, you guys have to go watch this stuff. I mean, like, really breaking ground.
Thank you.
Like, absolutely, it's people are always, we get emails, we get comments, of course, in the Discord, and people are like, I want answers to this, or at least to some of this in my lifetime. Like, can we move the thinking here a little bit? And like, I think that you're actually doing that with this work.
I'm reporting on it. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to be reporting on it. I mean, I can't take credit for the work. I do want to always make sure that, the credit goes to the guy, Adam Young, and Alex Dunn, who, particularly Adam Young, really has been on this bandwagon for like 10 years or so. A lot of people have been, right? And this is why it was so validating for me when they reached out. It's because like a lot of people have looked at these vases and these artifacts and said there is something there. Like visibly, you can see there's elements of precision. I mean, it's just absolutely mind-blowing stonework. There's incredible like perfection and symmetry and balance, and there's these thin materials that are extremely hard stone. And it's just, how do they do it? It's amazing. And wouldn't it be great if we can analyze it? And so a lot of people have been on that bandwagon, but Adam Young was actually the guy who set out and had the resources to try and do something about it. Like he did have a deliberate plan of going out and tried to acquire the most precise and best examples of these vases that he could, and he did eventually get his hands on what I term the OG vase, the original gangster, original granite, whatever. But the OG vase that all the initial work was done on, and he's been out there trying to get that scanned and analyzed, and eventually, he went on a trip with Chris Dunn and met Alex Dunn, and they took him a couple of years to kind of put all the pieces together, and then Alex brought in Nick Sierra, and of course they're professional metrologists. They work in the aerospace industry. They're familiar with the, all of the CAD and the geometric tools and the GD&T stuff that they do on their daily, in their daily lives, and they were able to analyze the results of the scan from this initial vase, and the conclusions started coming. It was mind blowing, and of course, Chris Dunn put Alex onto me and said, well, I think they did it and they couldn't get any attention on it. And they're like, well, we need an outlet for it. And I guess I'd had a relationship with Chris Dunn for a while, and they connected with me, and I was like, this is fantastic. Like, this is exactly what I've been calling for years. Like, you guys have done the thing that, as you said, like, if we want to move the needle forward, we want to move the conversation forward, we need to apply ourselves and our technology and actually investigate this stuff and try and put some metrics and measurements around it. And that's exactly what they did. And yeah, it personally was valid, just validating, I guess, right? It's like this theory and this thought that I've had for so long, as have many other people. And I was like, shit, here's the proof. Like, here's solid evidence that this is exactly what we're looking at. Like, it's really not something that's possible by hand. We're looking at real evidence of sophisticated machining and technology use that comes from some of the earliest periods of history. And, it's verifiable, and you can repeat it. And here's the model. Anyone can look at it. So, yeah, I was so happy when they contacted me, and it's sort of taken on a life of its own since then. And we put that out, and their timing was impeccable because it was, I think, 2 or 3 months before I went on Rogan.
Yeah.
And I was like,
that's
man,
right.
you guys have timed this well because now I can mention it on that platform. I probably didn't have enough context. I couldn't talk about it as well as I would have liked to, certainly as much as I can now and understanding all the things now. But that year since then has been insane in what's happened and what the opening this up to the world and making it, what do you want to call it, open source. It's been just an incredible response, and we've just, yeah, it's grown a life of its own from there on.
So to me, it looks like, you know, the conversation has moved because of this from these were done by hand, by the, you know, what's the name of the typical depiction that they show?
At Saqqara?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a name.
I don't know if they have a name for it. But it's, yeah, I mean, look, the typical explanation for these is, given their pre-dynastic and Old Kingdom, is there's no use of the wheel. You know, these are done with grinding, essentially, like they use crooked sticks with a flint, like weights on the end of a crooked stick with a flint tip, and they're rubbing on it with sand and banging on it with rocks. That's literally the technology level that is used to explain these. And in fact, there are scenes on the walls where you can see Egyptians doing that stuff. But
yes,
you know,
that's what I'm talking about.
It matches. Yeah, it's at Saqqara, like 3rd Dynasty, but it matches. You know, as if you've watched my content on it, I think that exactly matches the alabaster industry that we see. That was pretty much given rise from about the 3rd, 4th Dynasty. After these. You know, these vases had been in existence for a long time before that. Like, they go back almost tens of thousands of years. I mean, we have examples at 10,000 BC, even as far as 14 or 15,000 BC of burials that they've found these sort of artifacts in there. But certainly a lot of them attributed to, you know, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th Dynasty, Old Kingdom. And then after that, they sort of peter out, and you have this alabaster industry of these definitely handmade, definitely not as precise, much softer stone, beautiful work, but totally producible by these primitive methods. And in fact, this is one of the things that I did when I was in Egypt last time, as I was filming at one of the alabaster shops in Luxor. They are still making these things, still making these alabaster vases with the exact same techniques that they were using 3, 4, 5,000 years ago, just with steel tools now. And like, you can go to these alabaster stores and you can get the nice machined, lathe-made alabaster vessels, but you can buy these handmade ones, and they very much match the handmade alabaster vessels from ancient Egypt. But that's what that scene on the wall's depicting. But what happens in, I guess, the mainstream story is they go, well, see, this is just how they made all this stuff. Yeah,
exactly.
And it just doesn't make any sense. It's impossible, basically.
So these, aside from the provenance thing, these measurements have shown. So then people started saying, well, you know, it's easy to do with a lathe, right? Like, I've seen that. Like, oh, it's simple with a lathe, right? Yeah. But now it's some of the measurements that at least were taken recently by, I think I gathered this from watching your video, the Ancient Precision Confirmed, was basically saying that the section of the vase between the lug handles is also very precise. Right. And you can't do that with a lathe.
Well, you can't do any of it. And it's not just any old lathe either. So, in terms of outright numbers, I mean, we have examples with a number of these vases now where you're talking, 1.5 to 3 thousandths of an inch. Like, that's, and again, I do the demonstration in the video, or Alex does, where it shows you a single human hair is about 2 thousandths, between 2 and 3 thousandths of an inch thick. So,
yeah,
this is a tiny distance. If you want microns, it's like 25 microns is about 1,000th of an inch, roughly. It's pretty close enough, right? A single micron's about the size of a bacteria, so we're talking pretty small. So some people get all worked up about the metric versus bananas thing, but whatever. We're in America. The tools are in Imperial. Deal with it.
We're using bananas.
We're using bananas, goddammit. Yeah. I even put that in the video, and I'm like, mate, get your jokes out, because for sure there's people bitching and moaning about it. I'm like, oh, whatever. It's going to happen. But I know math is hard. You can't, the conversion's really hard, but you try. You'll be okay.
Yeah.
No, it's your job.
That's right.
You're
it's
making
my
the
job.
video.
God damn it.
You make the conversion.
I must repeat every measurement in both systems. Yes.
Yes, we got that in reverse for the Göbekli Tepe video. People were like, I don't know what a meter is.
Yeah,
Can you
what's a
tell me
meter?
what this is in feet? Yeah.
Look it up. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. I get the same thing.
Yeah.
I try, man. I did it in a lot of videos, and just all this many bananas, and it's just like, oh,
Yes.
Christ.
Yeah.
But anyway, my point is that it's not just any lathe. Like to get that degree of precision, it's not like some fucking wooden lathe contraption.
No. Right.
Where
yeah.
some dudes like strap some shit together with twine and sticks and wood and a spinning table that he's just sort of wobbling around all over the place. You need, and to do this stuff in granite like that, and not just granite, but all these other types of stone, diorite and things that are much harder than granite. I mean,
I'm working with a guy right now who is used to machine parts for NASA.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him about this, and he was like, you can't lathe granite. You have to grind it.
Right.
Like, yes, you can mount it on a lathe and you can spin it, but you're not going to be cutting it with
blowing it apart.
Any normal. Yeah, it would shatter.
That's right.
Especially if you get the thinness. So he's like, it's got to be a grinding action,
but circular.
So you have to have some kind of tool that's actually just grinding away at it.
Yeah, not a cutting tip.
And he's talking, not like a carbide cutting tip or anything like that. But he's talking about obviously modern lathing, like that you would lathe like a metal tool or something like that.
Yeah, it's
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say. I mean, it's just that is one of the big points. It's like people admitting that, and I even had a discussion with I'm going to forget his name again. Irving Finkel, who was at the Megalithomania conference recently. He's the curator of the Middle Eastern collection at the British Museum. Famous guy. You've probably seen him on YouTube. Long grey hair with a ponytail, big beard. He does like there's a chess. He plays the ancient game of whatever the chess precursor game was, and he's all over YouTube. Interesting guy. Hugh knows him, and Hugh Newman knows him. And I was hanging out with Hugh in the UK, and Hugh just like cold calls him, gets a hold of him, and says, and then hands the phone to me. And it's like I'm like, thanks, Hugh. Like I'm like, hey, bro, I'm trying to explain to him what we're doing, and you just get this. He's like, well. Yeah, anything that's turned on a lathe, it's going to be precise. Is kind of the pushback, and I don't want to argue with him. What I want is to get into the museum and to be able to look at scan some of these artifacts. I'm trying to have a relationship. Say, look, let me send you a breakdown of what we're doing and what we're proposing and this sort of stuff. I wasn't going to argue with him, but I just got immediately understood that people don't understand precision, and even people that have spent their life working with. In archaeology, they're not precision engineers. They don't understand the nature of precision and what we're looking at when we're talking about a couple thousandths of an inch in materials like granite. Because, you just people admitting that it was turned on a lathe. That's not sufficient, because you, in order to get those results in something like granite, you have to have ultra precise and solid bearings, rods. The screws, like all the components of this lathe, like massive metal, super strong. You have to just even be able to grip a piece of granite and keep it stable enough where you can exact enough force on that thing to carve it or grind it. I mean, all of those things take the very best kind of machinery that we have today. This isn't something that you can strap together with bits of wood in a backyard. Right. Like, this is industrial precision machinery. It would take some of our best machinery to get this result today, and
that's somewhat like that's what it's almost like a paradox that is precision, because in order to get a certain type of precision, you have to have some already type of precision.
You have to be.
If you want to talk about a bearing, you have to have a very precise circular object. And in order to get that, you have to have precision in order to cut that.
That's right. Yeah,
so
measurement and precision.
You got to make something spherical. You have to make spherical. I mean, even if it was just a sleeve or a bushing type bearing, the shaft and the bearing itself have to be precisely aligned. And to do that, you already have to have precision.
Yeah.
So it just keeps going back, and this is one of the things that really struck us when we got into this, was like, how did this even start? Like, how do you start? And the funny thing is, in the modern age, precision starts with basically rubbing three stones together.
Yeah, lapping, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and
that's just wild to me.
and
Really, it comes down to that. But then you have to work off of that and to move forward, and you can't move forward without that.
That's right. And more than that, it's one of the reasons why I insist, and I've done videos on this premise, is that there is a relationship between precision and function. Like you do not develop precision unless there is a need for like the functional return it gives you. Like it's too expensive to develop precision. And this is true for our modern world. Like precision starts, I mean, we started developing precision machining techniques in order to make naval cannons shoot straighter, because
that's what I was going to say. It all comes down to how do you manage an explosion inside of something.
Yes. Yeah, steam engine like this.
Yes. The bigger the explosion you want to make, the more precise this thing needs to be.
Yeah, because they used to cast, what they would do, they'd cast these damn cannons in steel or bronze or whatever, and then they'd shoot them while they were hot.
Yeah.
And they'd, all right, that's the way it's going to shoot from now on. It's just like, it's inaccurate as F, you know, like all over the shop.
Yeah.
And then someone figured out, well, maybe we can, if we actually figure out and we can make a straight hole on this thing, maybe we can make it shoot more accurately. And it turns out, and you stick this thing on a water wheel and they make a primitive lathe and they grind it out and they make a barrel. And that's where it starts. And then it gets in, it extends into, you know, watchmaking, timekeeping, which gave us the ability to measure longitude and navigate better. This wasn't a thing that happened until the turn of the 18th century. The James Cook's second voyage of discovery was only the time when we had enough accurate timepieces accurate enough where we could actually navigate with longitude as well as latitude. Because before that, we would have to run down an easting or a westing, right? You'd go to where you needed to be on the latitude, and then you'd go straight east or west because you couldn't measure east or west before this. And of course, that's very inaccurate. That's very inefficient when it comes to traveling across the ocean.
Yeah, especially when you're sailing. Yeah, what was the accuracy that they needed? It was something like the timepiece had to lose less than a second per month.
Yeah, something like that to get accurate longitude.
Which is like horribly inaccurate compared to what we have today. Right. But that was, you know, like the kind of clocks that they had back then, especially if, you know, you're trying to run a water clock or something with a swinging pendulum on a ship.
Yeah, right.
That's swinging, you know. So you're like, no, we can't use any of these tools that we've been using to keep time, like water dripping out of something or something swinging. You have to build something else. Yeah. Right. And so that you're right. There was time and precision in time as well, but most of it was about explosions.
Yeah, well, then steam of the industrial age and steam engines. All of a
sudden,
how do I
make something explode?
Contain
and keep
pressure
it inside this thing.
Right.
Yeah,
we need these flat surfaces, and we need bearing. Now we need to contain all that power and pressure. Yeah, and that's leads you down the path of like, well, we need to get better at this because there's a functional return on the back of it, so we'll spend the money to do it, and you end up a couple hundred years later doing 7 nanometer processors in silicon, making integrated circuits with literally millions and millions of transistors in them, so we can put the fucking things in washing machines and dishwashers and
that's right.
That's the other part of the point is that you're saying that precision follows function or a necessity of a type of function, and yet we have these vases that don't appear to have a function unless it's a message or it's just because one of the other options is once you have precision for some other reason, then whatever you make with those machines is going to be precise,
right,
to the tolerances of those machines.
Yes.
So the vases could be just artifacts of the precision level of the machinery of the time, or the function could be that they wanted to encode some like precise mathematics.
I'm sort of fascinated by the concept of that these objects are actually not their very precise work. In other words, because they're art objects or decorative objects, they're making them precise, but in the same way we might make a trash can or a poster or even a modern vase. Didn't you guys measure a modern vase in the recent video? Somebody, he went and brought one.
Yeah, marble.
It's very nice and polished on the outside, the marble one, but the interior was like whatever,
garbage,
right? They didn't care so much. And so you think about like when we're making objects like that, something like this, you want it to be precise enough to look good, but it just needs to look good. But if but then you also have your machines, and so the machine in your factory has this certain level of precision. That's the machine you use, and that's what you end up with on the object.
Yes.
But you don't maybe use your most precise machines to make stuff like this.
Well, yeah. I have a couple points to make on this. I know the exact point you're making, and I've thought about the same thing. So, firstly, you're right in that once you develop precision and your manufacturing system, and given this is I think there was a manufacturing system. This isn't just dudes banging on stuff with rocks and rubbing on it with sticks and shit. Once the manufacturing system delivers that precision, that's what you get. That's why our toasters and our car panels and everything today are very accurately made. They don't need to be, but the stuff gets designed in CAD and it gets executed on through a computer, and the system just punches it out and delivers it, and it's within whatever the tolerance is. These tiny little tolerances. It's very precise. Doesn't need to be. It's what the manufacturing system delivers. So, can you explain that stuff this way? I think so. I think there's a reasonable explanation. I do use that explanation, I think, for the statues, because there's been some work done on the statues and the symmetry in the faces of the Ramsey statues and the giant artifacts, which I also think are probably the output from these types of manufacturing systems. And you really can't argue that those statues are functional. They're clearly artwork. They're representational. They're symbolic. All these things, but they're very precise and they seem symmetrical. And at least as far as the scanning and the analysis that's been done so far, I think that's the result of these manufacturing systems. Now, the vases are a little different. I'm not sure what to make of them just yet. I think it's interesting that they seem to encode so much data. So one of the results of, if you watch I have this Tale of Two Industries, and I cover the vase thing a few times, and I've talked about it at conferences, but the depth of sacred geometry that seems to be in these things, this mathematical system that's behind them that is based on radians and pi and phi and sort of these universal principles and constants that encode our reality. I think it is communicating this information to us through time, and I don't know if it's deliberate or if that's just a result of the math system they were using. So that was just the basis for the system, and everything they did encoded those things. And that's going to be a really interesting point if we can continue to analyze more artifacts. Are we seeing this radial traversal pattern? Are we seeing the same significant ratios of pi and phi and the golden ratio? All these aspects that we found in the vases, I suspect and we've seen them in multiple vases, so we might see them in multiple artifacts. We're certainly seeing some indications of that just based on looking at some of the old work with this new lens now. Yeah. But are they functional? Are they artistic? I don't know. I think there's a chance that these vases might have actually been functional. I don't think they're all vases. I think there's too many of them. I think there's a good chance they were functional. They might have been, I don't know, resonators. I don't know what they were. It's one of those, it's that I get into this zone of how do you define a technology that you don't understand or you haven't discovered yet? It just is this magical realm of speculation, right? We'll know more about technology and science in 100, 1,000 years, so we can from that deduct that there are realms of technology and science that we don't understand today. And I think the explanation for some of this stuff, maybe even the pyramids, maybe the sites, maybe these ancient things we're looking at, the answers might exist in those realms that are outside of our understanding right now. And so it makes it really hard to speculate. But when I look at the vases, I go, okay, there seems to be a consistency in terms of form. There's 2 or 3 shapes and general shapes, the rounder ones, the hourglass shaped ones, the taller ones. Scale varies up and down. The lug handles are really interesting to me because I look at those and you can imagine, and forget the holes in the lug handles. I think the holes were added later. Most of the vases that have lug handles don't actually have holes in them.
I was going to say, if the holes added later makes sense.
Yeah, I think so as well.
People
that first scan, the holes aren't even, the holes are just so out of whack from being straight.
And we see that
somebody made them into vases.
Yes, I think they were definitely used as vases.
Yeah.
But whether or not they were initially vases, I don't know. Because some of these vases...
They look like vases.
Like the ones I've got up here, they're upside down because you can't actually stand them up the other way around. Like they have it, they're on like a point. There's some that are balanced really well, but this one up here next to this pyramid has a point on it. So it's an upside down vase. But the lug handles are interesting because I look at those and go, would that function as a cam lock? Imagine you stuff that into something and twist it. It's like a cam lock, and that might function that way. Are they resonators? Is there some other I can imagine a realm of possibility where they are functional. Maybe they're just parts of a bigger system, a bigger machine, and they were all dispersed and taken apart, then found by these, Mesolithic and Neolithic peoples and
Insulators.
dispersed. Whatever. Yeah, I don't know, man.
No, I mean, I'm not saying the vases are, but remember the glass insulators?
Yeah.
People used to collect these. And it's like, I remember seeing these when I was a kid. I have no idea what these are. This is not a cup. What is this? It's just weird. It's round. You turn it over. It's got threads on the inside. It's got these really weird, they're so strange looking to somebody who would, like, if you didn't know about electricity and that they might have been used as glass insulators on electrical wires. Like, these are very strangely shaped
objects.
Things with it's holes in it. So that's cool. I like the idea of camlock.
Yeah, it looked
That's
at
a fantastic idea.
I just think it's pure speculation, and I recognize that. And I try not to speculate too hard about this stuff because it's like at that point it's pure imagination. But
well, that's why you're coming on our show.
Yeah.
This is where you do all the speculation.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to speculate the fuck in the book. So.
Yeah, all right, good.
I'm not comparing them to insulators as though electrical. I'm just talking about the idea.
I get it.
See that form.
Yeah, and it's the example I've used. I'm probably used it on your show before too. It's like this thing, right? Look, you and I know what this is. Like, we can look at this and this black piece of plastic or glass that if you bang it with a hammer, it's going to break. I mean, you and I, we all have the context to understand what this is because we know what touchscreens are and wireless networking, cell phones, microphones, video cameras, all this stuff that makes up in our head what a cell phone does and what it is, or smartphone. But you go back in time, not even that long ago, and you show somebody something like this that's not powered on or anything, and they're just going to, what is that thing? It's like a shiny piece of rock or glass, and you just don't have the context to understand what it is. And it's possible, I think, that when we look at some of these artifacts and these sites, that we're in the same position. We don't have the context to truly understand what these things are. And then maybe once we get that context, we understand what, cell microphones and wireless networking and all those things are. Yeah, there you go. We might be able to put them into a context and understand it better, but we certainly won't be able to do that if we don't look at them with an open mind and investigate them to the limits of our capability, right? If we just go, it's all ceremonial, it's all just artistic, it's just accidental that they're precise. We know what they were doing. These are just canopic vessels or vases for oils and ointments and shit, and that's it. We're never going to learn about them. It's just, you have to kind of open up your mind and go, let's actually figure it out. Let's look at the engineering behind them. And I think the same thing goes for the boxes and the pyramids and all this stuff. We should just be open-minded about it and try and figure it out.
I wonder if, could the boxes, like, if we can figure out in some way what these are for, like, are all these objects have similar function? Like the boxes in the Serapeum might be large versions.
Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, they're not round, but yeah, these could be resonators.
Yeah. That's Chris Dunn's theory, right? The Helmholtz resonators, they're big ones. Yeah. And they do scale. Some of these vases certainly scale, but these are down at a smaller size. I don't know. I don't know. I get the.
I mean, it's crazy. They make them like thimble sized.
Yeah,
they
that's
do.
The
They're
other thing I was going to say. They have these tiny ones. Yeah.
I went and looked at those again.
That doesn't make any sense as a, because in the standard model, they're like, oh, yeah,
right,
these are for grave goods.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to put in there? His fingernails?
That's exactly right. Yeah, right. Yeah.
This little tiny freaking thimble-sized
symbolic
vase.
I also would love to, it would be, you've talked about that one that was found in the grave, the Mesolithic era grave, the 9,000, 14,000.
Mm-hmm.
Where are those now? Like, can those be traced?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to go. I mean, I do want to, and in fact, in February, when we go, I think we are going to go. You guys haven't been to the Nubian Museum in Aswan yet? I don't think so. We're going to go. That's where those pictures are for Toshka. People get bent out of shape about Toshka. I've had some people like, I can't find any reference to what you're talking about with Toshka. Like,
we're going to go.
Because there's images that it's at the Aswan Museum. Like, that's the records for that. It's not online. And we might be able to track some of that other stuff down.
Yeah,
but Toshka's kind of an outlier, and it's one example of many. Like, even Adam Young, the guy I was talking about before, he's got a vase, a big one that's really nice, and the provenance on it is is impeccable, but it was brought out of Egypt by the Czechoslovakian ambassador in the late 1800s, and it was found in a site that was later carbon dated to like 9 or 10,000 BC.
Yeah.
So you're still, I mean, this is a big vase. He has it. He has the vase, and there's no question about where it came from. And it's not made in any modern times because it was literally taken by the Czechoslovakian ambassador in the late 1800s. They weren't making.
So the provenance question has been solved.
Oh, I think so. Look,
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely wanted to address it because people have asked about it. I think logically you can work through the provenance question just by looking at what that vase represents, how precise it is, how difficult it is to make that in granite, like how expensive it would have been. And given that it has, so the OG vase that we looked at, the very first vase goes back to the 1980s. We have, and I go to some length to try and explain, like, this is the one you're holding. This is the nature of the antiquities market, right? Like, not everything is like perfectly provenanced because Egypt gets involved. Museums want to take it. Like, stuff was taken when it shouldn't have been taken at times. Yeah. Other times, a lot of stuff is legit, but some of it is has come through, not always legal means over the last several hundred years, and it's in these family collections that turn up in estate sales and whatever else. So, but even in the 80s, like, there's very few people, and it's a very open question to whether or not people would have actually been able to make that degree of precision in granite in the 80s, and at what cost. Like, it burns out tools. It would be tremendously expensive, and in the 80s trying to sell that sort of stuff onto antiquities market, it wouldn't have been worth very much. I mean, honestly, since we've done these vase videos, I know I've driven up these videos have driven up the price of vases. You can just ask Matt, like, the guy's been buying them. He's like, God damn it, like, he talks to these antiquities dealers like, yeah, we're getting so many inquiries about vases now. Like, all the prices have doubled or tripled for these vases that are on the market. People are generally more interested in, like, statues or faces, like the hieroglyphs and shit. These plain, unadorned vases weren't particularly interesting for a lot of people. So they weren't very expensive. And
damn, we missed out on an exit strategy.
Mistake,
I definitely
not buying vases before publishing these videos.
Fuck me. I've kicked my own ass so hard over the last year because of that. I'm like, I so should have bought a few vases and then tried to sell them, because we did. I would have made 2-3 times the money easy. Like, I'm so stupid, and I didn't think about it, but that's what happened. And
well, you're a terrible, terrible grifter, Ben.
I am. That's right.
You're really bad at it.
Drifter,
Yeah. I'm apparently, according to my critics, I'm in it for the money, and I'm just grifting and making this shit up. But damn, if I missed some opportunities along the way of how to do that, just to grift on people. Yeah.
Let's take a. This is fantastic. Let's take a break and come back. We'll keep talking about the vases.
All right.
Be right back.
All right, we're back. You didn't stop recording, right?
No.
Okay, all right.
Go.
We're back, folks. Brothers of the Serpent Podcast. Are we continuing with vase talk?
We can.
I wanted to get a little deeper into.
Did they hold flowers, or did they hold explosions?
Did you see some of the they held pencils? Did you not see the Photoshop that some of the guys in my Discord did of me? I have to show it. I can show it if you like.
Yeah.
I'll pull it up, but you guys talk about the flowers first, and then
Kyle wants to know if they held flowers. Is that what the vases are for? You think maybe you need something that's precise for flowers?
So I like this. I'm not going to talk about flowers. I don't know what they held. You could put anything you want in them. But
beers?
Yeah. I mean, hey, I drank
big ones. Sure.
This was a gift from old Aaron.
Yep.
And immediately, I drank wine out of it. It's a good wine vessel.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
But this radial transversal pattern.
Yeah, there you go.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Just a thought on this radial transversal pattern. If I have this correct, because I've had to struggle to try to understand this.
Sorry, I'm gonna stop sharing it because I do want to talk about the radial traversal pattern too.
He's showing, for those of you who are listening, he's showing pictures memes that people made of the Ghost, the famous scene in Ghost where he's helping
her do the pottery
on the pottery wheel, on the potter's wheel.
Patrick Swayze behind me, and
Patrick Swayze behind Ben,
on
like
a desk full of
helping him hold
vases.
the vase.
My
great.
Discord,
That's
they're a bunch of clowns, but yeah,
Yeah.
you
Cue
guys have
80s
them too.
music.
Radial traversal pattern though, that is
Yeah, so the idea that it's that you can pick, like, say the designer decides on a size of something, of one or two aspects of the object. From there, they gain their unit of measure, right? That's what I saw. Because if you had a vase of a different size, you're not using all the same size circles. It's based on that radian,
right
of whatever.
It's a ratio.
Size. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So your unit of measure is per item that you're making.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
So,
the base unit of measure that we figured out on this one vase isn't the same as what you might
as the
find on
base
the
unit
other.
for the others.
Right.
But the ratio is consistent. If you take one unit of measure at a certain length, then you use that in one vase. It's consistent across all the radii.
Yep. So
and then you go to a different vase. It can be a different length of unit, but that is the base unit for that item.
That's right. So what we've found is a fixed ratio between the curvatures, and there's lots of other items, but across multiple vases, we have found the same fixed ratio between the curvatures. Right. So, for example,
all I'm saying is that the base unit is different.
Yeah.
But the ratio is the same.
I think so. Well, and we can talk about the base unit as Mark thinks he might have discovered on the OG vase, the one that is in your desk on front of you there, the model, and I've got like 5 or 6 of them up here. So that base unit, if that's how you calculate it, that would not be the same unit of measure that we might find on different vases. Yes,
right.
That's right. But because it
reminds me
it scales
of the cubit. Yes, it reminds me of the cubit. They found multiple different cubits, and some. It's like, if I have this right, I could be wrong about this, but I seem to remember them looking for, like, what is the base unit of measurement in, like, say, a pyramid or multiple pyramids, and they keep finding like different sized cubits.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
but the division within that cubit is the same. So to me, it seems consistent that like they didn't have, or they didn't necessarily need or utilize a single base system of measurement. They used a base system of ratios.
Yes.
But so my question then is, can you have a like a big manufacturing base that can build all the machines you need with all these tiny tolerances to build these vases out of hard stones without a fixed measuring system?
Well, I would think that it, just like the vases, it would be per tool.
Right?
I think they had a measuring system. I do think they had a measuring system. They must have had a measuring system. Now, I don't know that the measuring system is necessarily encoded in the vases, but I think that the basis for their mathematics and their design is what we're seeing encoded in the vases.
I agree with that.
Because we use, that ratio would exist between the curvatures of the vases in any system of mathematics that you wanted to apply to it, because the ratios don't shift, right? You can bananas or imperial or metric or whatever. It's done irrespective of the system of measurement, and they must have had a system of measurement because we know that we know that the vases are very, very accurately represent what is the mathematical design behind them. So if you take and this is one of the experiments that Mark did that I think is a real telling point about these vases, is that once he discovered this fixed ratio, the radial traversal pattern, which is square root of 6/2 to the power of n, and then n scales up and down, right? Yeah. And that gives you base, your circle sizes, and on that original vase, you've got something like 11 or 12 different curvatures that range from 42 millimeters to 1.1 millimeter. Like that's the radius of the curvatures. 1.1 millimeters. Like, good luck drawing that shit by hand, by the way. But there's at least 12 degrees of mathematical interrelationship because you have 12 different curves that all fit that exact ratio pattern.
Yeah.
Up and down that scale, and that's primarily what that vase is made of, almost exclusively. And the only exceptions to that are other significant ratios that have to do with pi and phi, and we can talk about those in a minute. But once he recognized that pattern, and then he then used that pattern to create a mathematical model. Went into CAD, said, I'm going to just purely use the math that I've discovered in this vase, and I'm going to create a mathematical model of it based on the math only. And he creates a model on it. And then he compares the scan of the original vase to the mathematical model that he's created. And the median radial deviation is something like 6 microns or less. So it's like 3 or 4 microns. So you're basically within the tolerance of the scan. Like, we don't know at that point whether that's an inaccuracy in the scan or it's damage on the artifact. It's basically perfect, and you have a lot of that's the median deviation. You have plenty of measurements where it's better than
lesser
or right. That's the median, and so it's like the vase is a very accurate representation of this mathematical design. So yes, they must have been measuring this stuff pretty accurately because that's obviously that's how.
Yeah,
they're
so I
proving
understand
it
your
out.
point. It shows pretty clearly that they had a system. A unit of measure, a base unit of measurement.
Yeah,
they had a system. Of measurement for this.
Is it discernible by measuring multiple of the vases? Like, do you think it can be uncovered?
Well,
yeah, the difference between the scales of the
maybe. I mean, so we have yet to do enough analysis to get to that point. So, for example, and I can walk you through this if you want me to look at the slides. It's probably a good way to show.
Sure.
Let me quickly try and do that and. So it's probably a good way to show the
because so while you're trying to pull that up, I'm just saying
ahead.
because of the reason I'm interested in this is if they had a system of measure, it's another way you can look at the accuracy that they were working to. So if we can say, okay, here's the math that defines these vases, it seems to define them every time. It may be adjusted a little bit based on what basic shape they wanted, if they wanted the more round ones, if they wanted the tall ones. But basically, here's the math. And then if we can define also, and then you can compare the actual objects themselves or the scans of the objects to the mathematical model. And you can say, wow, look at the accuracy here. But then if we can discern a unit of measure and be like, okay, this is the system that they were using, then we can also check it against that.
Yeah.
And get another dimension of accuracy, right? Like they were doing this to this specific length.
Yeah.
And they achieve that length every time, or within these tolerances.
Well, we're certainly seeing commonality in the ratios, not only in the ratios between curvatures matching this radial traversal pattern, but also the encoding of pi and phi and like geometric and I guess geometric constants in terms of pi, and then phi being kind of a universal constant, right? It's the golden ratio. It's in everything. I don't think it's an accident when that sort of stuff gets encoded. But
right.
So Mark Vist and his analysis on the unsigned.io article. If people haven't seen it, I'd highly recommend checking it out. He did an abstraction. If you type in unsigned.io abstractions in Granite, you'll find the article that Mark wrote. He put in more than 100 hours of analysis into this model as a result of the public open sourcing of the model. This is one of the great benefits of actually getting this stuff out there to everybody. And he found just he blew my mind. He blew a lot of people's minds, the people that understood what his analysis is. And I finally kind of understood exactly what he was getting to, because he did finally get to what he thought was the base unit of measure for this vase. Because when you ultimately, and again, it is speculation, but when you look at the dimensions of the vase in terms of this base unit of measure that he calculated, it vastly simplifies these ratios. So you end up with radii and diameters of different of specific features of the vase being like, this is pi base units of measures. This is phi base units of measures. This is
Right,
phi
yeah,
squared base units of measure. This is pi over phi squared base units of measure. So these significant ratios just pop out at you when you look at it through this lens of this one particular base unit of measure, which also happened to be a really interesting number because it's 18.739 millimeters.
That's right. It's like the wavelength of light.
It's the wavelength of it's the wavelength of a 16 gigahertz radio, like electromagnetic wave. It's in a vacuum, specifically 16 gigahertz. Like exactly.
What's significant about 16 gigahertz?
Well, this could be just a pure coincidence, but it does happen to 16 gigahertz exactly, like 16.0. So it's 16 gigahertz exactly, and we use that range of it's a microwave range that we use for satellite communications today. Like it seems to be pretty accurate. Like there's a lot of room for movement outside of like 16.0 gigahertz. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
I don't know what the significance of it is, but
So
it exactly matches 16 gigahertz, the wavelength of a 16 gigahertz electromagnetic wave traveling in a vacuum. So speed of light.
Right. So that requires the speed of light, that about the electromagnetic spectrum, and that was the next question.
Well, if they had, because I don't know, that one's tough for me to
within 2 microns.
That's tough because hertz is oscillations per second, and so like nowadays we're measuring a second by, like, we're calibrating it to what is it, orbital
cesium atom.
Yeah.
It's
so it's like
it's an electromagnetic wave, and you're right. You're right. 16 gigahertz is just
because
the hertz measurement is arbitrary. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Just what I'm saying. The electromagnetic spectrum. It's a spectrum. It's analog. So a wave can be any length.
Right. And we are arbitrarily deciding what's a round number.
Of
Yeah. We're arbitrarily deciding what's a round number. Yeah, I get you. Yeah. Well, I've never claimed that it means anything other than it's just an interesting fact that it happens to match almost exactly a 16 gigahertz wavelength.
Well, the length of it is based on a second, right? I mean, a second is a geo-definable length of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seconds, and our time measurement does go back some distance, and it is all related to cosmic movement.
Yeah, but I mean, to define the second fine enough to measure 16 gigahertz wavelength requires a little bit more precision than gazing at
looking
stars,
at shadows
right?
on the ground.
That's what I'm saying. Like we're talking about like measuring like the I don't know, however they do it now with it's like
it's the vibrations of a cesium atom inside of it. Yeah, something like that.
I think
so I'm just saying.
It's just a coincidence. It could be a coincidence.
I'm just saying, like, this is what you have to do. You have to say, okay, if this is the system they're using, what is required to know this system? Right. I was going to ask the same thing about the math, right? Like we're constantly told about the higher math is not developed until more recently. But if these guys are doing some of this math and they're doing it in 9,000 BC.
Right.
I'm not saying that they didn't have it. I'm just trying to say, like, the first thing that came to mind when it comes to like saying the wavelength in the electromagnetic spectrum is that it's an analog spectrum. So you can choose any wavelength. Like you could just say, here's the base unit of measure. There is a electromagnetic wave that is that length exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
what is it? Right. So, that's why I asked what's the significance of 16 gigahertz.
There's none typically.
Now hertz is waves per second. So then the only way to actually know that is to very, very precisely define the second. And we have done that in a certain way. So that's just kind of the way I'm it's like, what is this actually?
Yeah, it's an arbitrary, like what is a round number in an analog spectrum? Like we don't know. Like I get it. And it could just be an analogy. I actually think the most important, the more interesting thing about this base unit of measure on this vase is the fact that it encodes and shows up all of the pi and phi and significant ratios of the artifact itself. Like I think that's more interesting. Once you define and you go, okay, that 16 gigahertz thing's got nothing to do. It's like, hey, this just so happens to equal this.
Yeah, of course. I get that too.
But there's several equivalencies that show up that this is a very particular and important ratio, which is the radius of the internal opening, which is essentially what gets used as the base unit of measure on this vase. And when you look at the other elements of the vase, like the diameter of the opening or the radius of or the diameter of the neck or the radius of the foot or all these other things, you start to see these significant ratios appear, which is like, okay, this is pi base units of measure, this is phi base units of measures, phi squared, etc. Like there's all these different combinations of pi and phi that I don't think you can't claim that this is accidental. Like this seems to be designed in. You can find pi and phi in some things in nature or in an artwork, but when you get to an artifact like this where you have 12 degrees of mathematical interrelationship between all the ratios of all the curvatures based on that radial traversal pattern, and you've got dozens and dozens of significant ratios appearing that show up in, using geometrical constants like pi and universal constants like phi, it stretches credulity to suggest that that's accidental. I mean, it literally...
I agree with that.
Completely impossible, I think, at some point. I mean, Mark, in his article, says that, it'd be far more likely for you to wake up one morning and have an entirely new universe, a quantum universe sprouting out of your left nostril, than it would be for this to be an accidental, just designed because some dude was rubbing on it with rocks and sand and ended up with this device, which is... I think, honestly, when the discussion gets to this level about these artifacts, I think it's like we've moved the needle at that point, right? Because we're no longer talking about... You got to always keep that in mind. Like, literally, they're explained by guys banging on them with rocks and sticks and sand.
Yes.
Well,
and,
I mean...
Come on,
Yeah.
Real quick, are you looking up the gigahertz thing?
Yeah.
Okay, real quick before we go back to that.
I want to hear more.
One idea is that like if you had a tool set, so the tool maker is the one using the radial transversal pattern.
Yeah.
Right? The tool set is a series of radii.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they step up in size is by this pattern. So then the guy making the vase only has to design certain elements. This would be an interesting experiment.
Yeah.
If you had a set of tools for your lathe that were sized up according to this radial transversal pattern, and you came up with, then what would your design options be if you're like, okay, well, I want the mouth to be this big, and then I'm gonna cut this edge and then cut that edge. So it would be interesting to see like how many different designs would you get this sort of pi and phi ratios represented in various ways. So that, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because
some of the stuff that shows pi and phi does not conform to the radial traversal pattern.
So those are intentionally made
because they
into it.
I think because they show pi and phi. Yes.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Is that like, how difficult is that if you start out with this set of tools and then you have to like come up with a design?
Well,
you're trying to show. I don't know. It's like,
well, so one of the other points Mark makes about this is that when you look at the design and what it would take to design this vase, and given that there are curvatures as small as 1.1 millimeter radii, this starts to, like, you can't do that by hand.
Scaling it up and down.
So you can scale it up, sure. You can make
You're not going to draw it in sand.
Yep, piece of paper as big as the room you're sitting in, you might be able to draw it. You still got to scale that thing down and figure out. And let's not forget that it's been accurately represented to within a few microns. That design was executed in granite.
Right. Yeah.
Very accurately.
That's amazing to me.
So there's you get to this point of, okay, so how do you? It turns out that the best way to actually represent that vase is mathematically. So it's with formula. It's not by like a drawing or a reference.
A large drawing scaled down.
Right. You can't draw it down that size. You can't get the curvatures down that size. So it's done mathematically. And now the trick that Mark gets to is like, we don't know of any other way of transferring like a mathematical design or a design like that to a manufacturing system, something that produces lathe operating outputs. And, it's like there's no other mechanism or phenomena or animal or process or anything that we know of in our entire history as the human race and all of our combined knowledge that does that, except the one thing that we call a Turing machine.
Yeah.
Which is a
computer.
a device that can basically take data, and operate on that data and based on a set of preset conditions, like change its state, and then that drives a specific output. Like that requires a Turing machine.
Analog output.
Yeah, it could be analog, could be digital. Like you can make these things pneumatically or hydraulically or mechanically. We do it electronically, but
yeah,
we call them computers.
Going from mathematics to an actual like physical motion.
To an output, right. So that's the other part that's interesting. It's like there seems to be a Turing machine involved in this process somewhere, and it's logically, if you follow the design process and what we see as the output, it's hard to deny that. Like I get a lot of flag. I think the comments on that video are hilarious because I did a video called like were ancient computers used to design this vase? Yeah. It's not clickbait because that's exactly where it goes. And now I'm not suggesting it was a IBM laptop, It could have, I don't know, but it might have been some other like, mechanical or what is it, what's the Antikythera mechanism?
Yeah.
Who knows? Like there's obviously some mechanical sophistication going on in the past. We've seen that. And it's quite possible that some of this stuff could have been done. It's still a fairly sophisticated Turing machine. It's not like a simple, couple different transistors or pneumatic transistors or something. It's more complicated than that. But it may not have been electronic. There's lots of other ways of potentially solving that problem. But it does require, as far as we know, that the only way you can achieve this, if you are working from a design, as indeed it seems like that's the case with this vase, that a Turing machine has to be involved in it. And now I'd remind everyone, we're leaps and bounds beyond butt flap wearing dudes rubbing on stones with sticks and rocks.
Right.
Like, come on.
That's what's been so fascinating about watching this process is you go from the people like, well, they did it with rocks and a stick, and then they're like, oh, you can easily do this on a lathe, right? And then we're like, well, I mean, maybe you need a 5-axis something or other. I mean, you kind of need a computer to sort of translate it into a 5-axis.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about the thing that you raised at the very start, which is like the area between the vase handles.
Yeah.
Which is, yes, it is. All the analysis, and we did this in Danville, we tested this on a few vases. Yes, it shows the same level of precision as does the rest of the vase, which makes it very challenging to explain how you can do that.
Takes the lathe out.
It does. Yeah.
It cuts the lathe out of the question.
Well, it gives you two options. It either says that, well, it's a 5-axis machine, so it's made in a single pass, or like one machine does it, which is like a 5-axis mill, or the process that made this could handle the lack of like positional calibration and tool changes better than we can. Because today when we do stuff like this, where you have to put it in a different process with a different tool, it introduces errors that you see in the final result, and we account for that in our design processes. And this is something that these actual metrologists and literal rocket engineers and jet engine people that are working on this stuff have drilled into me. Like, I don't work in that field, but they tell me, like, we account for that stuff in our work. Like, we know that when we have to take this piece to a different machine to do a different process, it's going to not be as accurate relative to the other stuff, and we account for that. But that's not what we see on these vases, which is really fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. What's up with the gigahertz?
Well, the reason, I mean, he's laughing at me
No, I'm not laughing at you.
This is it's a deserved laugher. But This is the thing. Like, I find through, and I'm sure you guys know this, like studying this stuff for a long time, that these people, that whoever this was that designed these kind of things, they always had multiple lines of connection to the, like, if let's say you find some specific number in their measuring system or in an object or whatever, you find that it's connected in 5 different ways to 6 other things, right? In terms of numbers. And so I'm just like, I'm interested in So if it's possible that this 16 gigahertz wavelength is in here on purpose,
Is it significant? Yeah. Is it purposeful?
and if we don't know what the significance is, that could lead to new discoveries.
Right.
Right. Like, why were they connecting it to it? Because
That's-
it's going to connect to 5 other things.
That's what I was asking. What's the significance of?
Well, I
16
just
gigahertz?
looked it up. Like, what are we looking at here? And so I've got physics.phi.astr.gsu.edu. Okay, and so they have this this website, nothing but text, talking about all these different bands. Under microwaves and radar, which the frequencies are 1.6 to 30 gigahertz, so the 16 is in there. They say, in interactions with matter, microwave radiation primarily acts to produce molecular rotation and torsion. And microwave absorption manifests itself by heat. Molecular structure information can be obtained from the analysis of molecular rotational spectra. The most precise way to determine bond lengths and angles of molecules. Microwave radiation is also used in electron spin resonance spectroscopy. Okay, so now you're talking about,
they're measuring the second.
yeah, you can measure molecules with it. It spins them, or as a result of spinning molecules.
There was something I need to talk to Alex and Nick and figure this out again. And I'm going to completely ham fist my way through this, but there was something about the speed of a hydrogen atom that seemed related to this that they were excited about that I didn't grok. I didn't grok from Mark's report, but they did, and I need to find out specifically what they were worked up about.
That's what I thought. That's why I was looking this up, because I remembered this idea. So there was this idea with SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, that one of the bands that you want to study when you're looking for signals from space is this specific one that has to do with hydrogen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me see if I can find out what that is. Hydrogen frequency.
Yeah, that might be it. I know. I remember Alex and Nick talking about that a while back. Damn. Yeah, I'm getting those guys. They're definitely going to do more podcasts. I want them to do some more talking.
Yeah.
And they're going to do some conferences and stuff. I know Alex is interested in getting out in front of this and doing more of the public-facing stuff, which I would be very happy for him to do because he's the expert on this stuff.
I can't find a simple answer to this. Let's see. Is that 1.4 billion hertz? So that's
it's not the same. Yeah.
Not the same. Yeah. So anyway, it's just interesting. Like, if this frequency has some other significance, and maybe we don't even know what it is, but I find that these people, it just seems interesting to me that the measurements and the systems, the ratios and stuff that you find in objects like this are always pointing at other things.
Yeah.
They connect to each other in multiple ways. And I
There's a lot of that going
I go
on.
back to the question also, like, what is the level of math we're talking about here? We're discussing, like, did they have computers? Like, what kind of machinery? What precision did they have to have in their manufacturing process to have an end result of objects that are this precise in imprecise materials?
Yeah.
But then, but another question that goes along with that is what's their corresponding abstract level of precision? Like, what was the level of their math?
Well,
It must have been very high. Like, what's the level of their ability to make a measurement system? That's why I was interested in a base measuring system, because, like, the accuracy of your ability to check against a measuring system you have is reflected in objects that you make.
that's right. Yeah, and it seems like though, I think we've just discovered the mathematical principles behind the vase, and they certainly very accurately represented those in the artifacts themselves, such that we could figure out what they were, and then actually make a measurement and say how close did you get, and then it turns out they got really damn close. So
Really close.
yeah. Well, and
In materials
that are very difficult.
difficult. Yeah.
Like
they're non-homogeneous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The dumbest materials that you could frankly try to do that shit in. But it happens to be the material that's going to last the longest as well. Like, you make these things out of steel or metal or anything else, really, it's not going to last as long.
Which they may have.
They may have. Well, that's
made a
right.
lot
Well,
of
the Antikythera mechanism, that's what's interesting about things like, not that I'm comparing the Antikythera mechanism to this, but it's a great example. Just metal, like, it's stupid that the only reason we have that thing is because it was on the bottom of the ocean being degraded by salt water. Like, it would have disappeared eventually, but we found it. And there's clearly evidence that there were probably lots of these things, but the ones that were on land that were found, I mean, metal just gets taken. It oxidizes, it erodes, or people take it and cast it into whatever tool they want for because it's so damn precious. I keep trying to tell people that. They ask, where are the tools? I'm like, you could fit all of the metal that they found, discount gold and silver, which are really no good for tools and weapons, but you take the actual metals that are useful in ancient Egypt, you could fit the whole...
Tie it onto the end of your spear, dude.
Golden metal, golden sword. Yeah.
You find that tool tip.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sharp
or you
tool tip.
sharpen it up, recast it.
Lashing this onto the end of my stick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to it. It either got turned, it got used, it got melted, it got taken because it's precious, and it's so little of it that's been found. You could fit all of the stuff from ancient Egypt over all the years and all the digs and everything into pretty much a small room, all of the metal stuff they've actually found.
Right.
And again, discounting gold and silver because they found pounds and pounds of that shit, but it's no good for tools. It's decorative.
Oh, there's a pile of it under Nimrit, bro.
Yeah, it may well be, man. Jesus Christ. God, I want to get into there. But
There's a hall of records under there that no one has entered.
That's right.
Yeah.
The dudes died trying to get in there. So what? Let's try again. That was the 60s. Let's go again. You know?
That's right. All right. Break time.
All right.
Let's take a break.
All right.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, brothers of the Serpent Podcast, Uncharted X, a Swapcast, actually. So we are joined by Ben. We've been talking ancient precision, vases. So you pulled up a graphic earlier. Let's take a quick look at that.
Sure.
I know we went through some of it already, but I'd like to take a look at that and get into the details, and then we can discuss some other stuff about Egypt.
We can.
But let's
Can you see
let's
this?
take a look at this. Yes.
And if I move this, is it going to blow it up? Does that work still?
It doesn't change anything. Yeah.
All right, good. Yeah, so what we were looking at, this is kind of relates back to what we were saying before about these significant ratios and their mathematical system. Like we know that, at a minimum, it involved concepts like pi, phi, even the radian. And in fact, I'll back it up one just to talk about the radian because they also used the concept of the radian quite elegantly in this vase, and we've seen it in other vases too. And if people don't know what a radian is, it's a simple way of measuring angles on a circle. That's a much more elegant way than our sort of 360 degrees. And you can see the graphic here. If you can't see it, I'll describe it. It's you take the radius of a circle, you apply the length of that radius to the circumference of the circle. And then the angle that makes, so if you sort of cut that pie shape out of a circle, that angle in the center is 1 radian, right? So you have 1 radian, 2 radians, 3 radians, and then it's pi radians is half a circle, so 3.1416 radians is exactly half a circle, and then there are 2 pi radians in a full circle in terms of degrees. So. But this 1 radian arc is a, it's a geometric principle that relates to things like pi and just basic geometry, and we see it reflected in the design of the vases. They use the 1 radian arc quite extensively in this particular vase. They use it to describe the angle of the top part of the vase, the actual angle of the sides of the vase relative to the circles that the maximum internal diameter, the circles of life or the flower of life patterns that Mark originally started with on this vase. They're also, the 1 radian arc is also used to describe the location of the handles relative to the other geometric features on the vase. It just plays into it. It's just an example of other geometric principles that are encoded in the vase, and we actually see this on other vases too. Like there's. Yeah, I can tell you, like the spinner vase or the very thin vase has the use of 1/3 of a radian arcs, and there's 1 radian arcs in some of the other ones as well. And we could back up and talk about kind of the the circle of life, and it was the discovery of these interrelated sacred geometric patterns that led to the discovery of the radial traversal pattern and that ratio between the curvatures. So it basically started with the looking at the circles of the maximum internal diameter and the maximum external diameter of the vase, and then creating these circle of life patterns based on those, where those circles were. And we found that those patterns described a lot of the other features of the vase, the top of the vase, the bottom of the vase, the foot of the vase, and the relationship between those two sized circles, so the maximum internal diameter and the maximum external diameter, happened to be the square root of 6/2. Right, that was the relationship. And so from using that, then they took that ratio and looked at the other curvatures and found actually this is the same ratio that we see reflected up and down all of the other curvatures, just to the power of n, like so
Right.
-1, -2, or 3, 4, whatever it is, up and down the different curvatures. But the other thing that's encoded in the vase, and these are the other curvatures, the significant diameters or significant sort of features of the vase that don't match that radial traversal pattern, they seem to be there, and they also reflect pretty significant ratios in terms of pi and phi. So pi being 3.14, this how many times the circumference of a circle goes into its the diameter of a circle goes into its circumference, and then the golden ratio, which is 1.618 or etc.
0.618.
Yep. And that's the golden ratio encoded in nature, the Fibonacci sequence, etc., etc. Like, this is a fundamental of nature, and I mean, Randall does a great job explaining this, and it's encoded in everything in nature, from molecules and DNA to the spiral formation of galaxies and everything in between. We see this encoded in these elements in the vase. So, for example, if you take the D0 here, so basically the straight red line, the diameter of the outer lip of the top of the vase over the radius of the internal opening, or RI, the straight blue line, you get pi. And you get pi to within 0.1%, which in real terms and real measurements on the vase is around 32 microns. So 32 picometers or microns. So very accurately, so within 0.1%, this ratio of DO to RI is pi. Similarly, we see phi squared when we look at the diameter of the neck, DN, this straight line on the right-hand diameter, which is the diameter of the neck, compared again to the the radius of the internal opening, we get phi squared, and we get phi squared to within 0.07%, so around 20 micron. So very accurately, we're seeing these significant ratios appear. We also see it when we look at the foot of the vase. So again, if you look at the diameter of the opening, which is that same what we saw on this first one, that straight red line, the diameter of the outer lip. DO is the outer lip, not the inner lip, the outer lip. And we put that over the radius of the foot. We also get phi squared within 0.08%, or around 35 micron on the actual vase. And what's interesting about these is that these are ratios and measurements that are on two completely separate ends of the vase, right? So it's remarkably accurate, given that these are features that are as far apart from each other as they can be. So because we've got pi and phi in both of these, and we've also talked about the diameter of the outer lip in terms of pi in that first equation, we actually get this double equivalence. We have two ways of expressing the diameter of the outer lip, right? So it's this double equivalence. So we can actually express the radius of the foot in a different measurement in terms of pi, and not just we can do it in terms of pi and in terms of phi. So the radius of the foot now equals the radius of the internal opening times pi over phi squared. This is this double equivalency because we're seeing pi and phi in both of these measurements. And what's interesting in this, and in fact, I don't know if I can do, does this follow on your screen? You see this?
Yeah. Yep.
You see in the, I guess the...
Base unit revealed.
Yeah, base unit revealed. I just want to see the kind of the, I guess, the step through of the animations here. So through pi and phi and this double equivalence of the radius of the outer opening, we can connect all four measures. So the diameter of the outer lip, the diameter of the neck, the radius of the internal opening, and the radius of the foot. And it looks complex, but it's actually pretty simple when you step through it. So it's those same measurements we just went through. Where is it here? Why is it not showing up here? Damn it. Sorry. In my other version of slides, it goes through it. So, but I'll step through it. So the diameter of the outer lip equals the radius of the internal opening times pi, and the tilde is and. The diameter of the neck, these are the same things we went through before, equals the radius of the internal opening times pi squared, or phi squared, and the radius of the foot, and this is that double equivalency measure we mentioned before, that equals the radius of the internal opening times pi over phi squared. So something that's in all of these, you might notice, is Ri, so the radius of the internal opening. So we can now say, let's assume that the radius of the internal opening equals 1.
Yeah.
Now, if the radius of the internal opening equals 1, we can simplify these equations such that the diameter of the outer lip equals pi, because we're taking out, we just basically replace Ri with 1.
1 times pi.
Yeah, it's 1 times pi. The diameter of the neck equals phi squared, because it's 1 times phi squared. And the radius of the foot equals pi over phi squared. So these ratios appear. So therefore, we can assume that the radius of the internal opening equals 1. That's how Mark got to this idea that this might be the base unit of measure for the vase, and that is, as we discussed before, 18.739 millimeters, which also equals the wavelength of an electromagnetic wave at 16 gigahertz to within 2 microns. So it's 18.737 if you divide the speed of light by 16 gigahertz, speed of light in a vacuum by 16 gigahertz, you get 18.737 millimeters, which is 2 micron or 0.002 of a millimeter off that 18.739. Now, if you followed the math, you probably already realized this bit, but it's interesting to then look at the rest of the vase through the lens of that base unit of measure, and these elegant, significant ratios start to appear when you do that. Now, obviously, the opening radius of the neck is 1, right? The unit is 1, because that is the ratio, that is the measure we're using. That equals 18.74 millimeters. But you get down to things like this, where it's the max lip diameter or the outer lip diameter. That's pi base units. The minimum neck diameter is phi squared base units. The foot radius is pi over phi squared base units. So that's kind of the logic that he used to get to what might be the base unit of measure for this vase, because these aren't accidental. I don't think this just pops up accidentally,
Right.
that you have these significant ratios relative to one of the main measurements on the vase itself. And what's interesting, since this happened, and this was the result of kind of the initial analysis effort on this one vase, and this is what's really encouraging to me, is that Mark, and there's other researchers also involved in this effort now on the mathematical side. The process is now automated. So they've written some computer programs where you can put in the measurements of the vases and it will show you significant ratios. So it will actually compare everything to everything and pump out a list of what are the significant ratios. And it's something that we could actually apply this to any. I do want to do this experiment at some point. Take a household object. Let's take a regular coffee cup or something and just see, okay, can we see the same type of significant ratios appearing in regular artifacts? I don't think we will. I don't think it's going to be anything like what we see on these vases, because people say that. That's one of the arguments against these vases.
Yes.
Oh, you see pi and phi and everything. You can just look at stars in the sky, or this stuff's just like made up math. And
right.
I don't think that's true. And particularly, I definitely don't think it's true when it comes to the ratios in the curvatures and the radial traversal pattern, but I also don't think it's true when it comes to pi and phi and these significant ratios and these other features. And now that we've got an automated process, if we scan some other artifacts and we get measurements on them, we can actually run it through this process and see. And that's part of the work that's going to be going on right now. And what's really super interesting is that we're only talking about the one vase at this point, but we've seen the same things in other vases. And that's been a huge step forward for this whole project is that not only are we seeing the radial traversal pattern, the exact same ratio between curvatures in multiple vases that have been scanned and analyzed, we're also seeing these significant pi and phi ratios in the main features of these vases.
Right.
It's the same thing. Like it's just not accidental. Like it's
Right.
insane.
Like you said in your video, it's like it's not a unicorn, right?
It's not a unicorn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
I have heard this same thing. This same argument from, I don't know if you could even say skeptics, just people who it's like they don't want to accept that this is an important thing that happens. Like when you study some ancient object and you're like, wait a minute, look at all these very interesting mathematical ratios, whether you're looking at it in the Great Pyramid itself, because people have found tons of them in that.
Yep.
Like, wow, if pi and phi are represented in a million different ways in all the structures inside the pyramid and all that, and people are like, well, you can find those same relationships in a kitchen stool if it's well made, and I'm like, we'll do it.
That's right. Do it.
Get a freaking stool and show me, like, oh yeah, look here's pi and phi and like here's pi over phi squared.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to see the same thing. I mean, I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
People say that. And,
okay,
and you can
but here's
find
the problem.
phi. You can find phi in things, but I'd challenge you to find 12 or 13 degrees of mathematical interrelationships.
Yeah, that's
To
what I'm
the
saying.
degree
It's,
that
the,
you
it's,
see
it's the
this
way
stuff.
that they're all connected. Yes.
exactly.
No one's gonna even try this on like a natural cedar wood stool, because they're definitely not precise. Like most like artistic objects are not precision. They don't have like bilateral symmetry. They don't. You're not. It's not difficult to find where it's not square or not round.
Sure.
Most pieces of art actually kind of it's almost they're intentionally
Organic.
a little bit
But you'll
organic
see
with
phi
it.
in that. You will see the golden
I know,
ratio
but
in that.
My point is it is that you're not looking for accuracy in mathematical representations
Right.
in most handmade works of art,
Right.
because there's no reason to do that.
Yeah.
Like people, okay, so people have done this with like, Da Vinci's paintings and stuff like that, where they're like, look at
these angles.
and it's so roughly done. It's like the position of the guy, he's down here and his arm is going up, and then if you kind of look, and then there's a lamp up there, and it's just like kind of like, well, he's sort of everything is positioned in the room in this beautiful sort of phi ratio spiral,
Yeah.
and that's fine, but it's not accurate.
Right.
It is very arbitrary.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the radius of a circle down to the micron level,
Right. It's
you
a different
wouldn't
story.
even try to do that on a normal handmade piece of art.
No, I know. Yeah.
That's the key here.
Yeah.
It doesn't even compare, because you can get measurements to this precision level
Right.
and then find pi to a high degree of accuracy, which you're not going to find in some hand painting.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
But I would like to know, like, is the rough radius of the top of a stool, in some pi over phi ratio to the radius of one of the legs?
Yeah, that would be fun to
I would
find
love
out.
to know this.
Well, we can scan and find out. We now have applications written where if we can scan the artifact or scan anything, we can put in the significant measurements of that object. It'll figure it out for us. Like it'll do that. So, it was interesting. You talked about the pyramids. I want to make a point about the vases. Sorry, I'm going to change topics briefly.
I have
so
some
go
great
ahead,
calipers,
Kyle.
man. I got this beer can. We can measure this, and we can measure the lip, and we can see.
Yeah, beer can would be a good measurement. Yeah.
Did
Yeah,
Lone
it
Star put mathematical measurements?
Did Lone Star onto something, bro? Drinking the correct beer for Texas. That's good. Yeah. I was going to say that pyramids and the vases. Yeah. So it was a recent discovery for me, like a connection at least. So I was at CPAC, speaking at the CPAC conference, and Robert Grant was speaking at the CPAC conference too. And Robert has done some new work in terms of analyzing, and I'm going to ham fist this, but I want to make the connection because this blew me away, and this again came from the audience, like it came from a commenter.
This is a precision conversation, man.
It is.
You can't just hand fist this.
I will ham fist it, and I will reserve my right to correct what I say later. How about that? But well, so he has done a bunch of new research looking at the specific slope angles of all of the different pyramids, and indeed things like the ratio of sort of length to width of the Giza Plateau, and he's mapped all of those things and found that they correspond to the harmonic scale, like the F sharp, like the harmonic scale in terms of ratios and measurements, and that the different pyramids represent these things on the harmonic scale. And what's interesting is that once we posted the radial traversal pattern, I had a commenter talk about the fact that the square root of 6/2 to the power of 3, 4, or 5, whatever, also matches this exact same kind of harmonic scale. So I think it's an interesting perspective. I want to test it, and we're looking into it to see if that holds water. But what's interesting to me is it is a potential connection between the mathematics of design.
Yeah.
So the mathematical design between things like the pyramids and the vases could be connected through these elements, and it was an interesting connection. And I have yet to speak to. I mean, it was really bizarre because I spoke to Robert about it. I mean, I met him. I didn't know who he was. We were up looking at a telescope in the hotel in Palm Springs, and I was like, "Oh, he was speaking. I'm speaking." I'd never seen the guy. I never heard of the guy. I don't watch TV. I don't watch Gaia. Probably shouldn't say that, but I don't really watch a lot of other stuff. But I didn't know who he was. But we were talking. I was telling him what I was doing. Then he telling me what he was doing. Then I watched his presentation. I'm like, man, there's a lot of synchronicity here between these ratios and what we're talking about. And then afterwards, after I talked to him, I posted that video when I was in Egypt, and somebody put me onto this fact about the radial traversal pattern matching the acoustic scale, and I was like, shit, that's very interesting relative to this work. So that's an angle that I want to try and pursue and figure out. But it's just interesting.
Yeah, and it's like this. Whenever I hear this kind of stuff, it strikes me that we have these words or these sayings that, living in harmony, right? This idea of like being in harmony, or the as above so below. And I think of this, and I'm like, is there something there, right? Is like, I don't know why the word is being used, but does this idea come from some very ancient concept, or even a sort of a quant suff of this concept, that there's this harmony and these objects are made in it.
Yeah.
All the way up to the pyramids themselves and the angles and the math. And there's a kind of harmonic happening. What is it harmonizing with?
Yeah. Well, nature. I don't know. It's like it's the universe.
That's what I was thinking.
This whole. I mean, the fact that I don't think it's accidental that you have these universal constants encoded in these artifacts. I don't think it can be. I think it's a communication. It's like it's telling you they understood these things, and that's a deep understanding of the nature of reality and the universe.
Yeah.
It blows me away that people think it could be just accidental or whatever. I don't think it is. I think it's pretty clear indication of sophistication and knowledge and harmony with nature. I mean, they're based. They literally have a more harmonious I look at it as, and I think there's a more harmonious sort of mathematical system at play here, like one that is more tightly entrenched with these principles than our own system was. Like, it's not, these are like more fundamental base units for them, like these particular ratios and these constants. They were using them and they built their system around them, versus we measure them and we express them in our units of measurement. But I think they were, a little bit more tightly coupled to it. That's what it seems like to me. And it's just like a fundamental piece of everything they did.
So if the radius of this object, the radius of the outer lip on the top here is 1.
The internal opening, the radius of the internal opening. But yeah.
Oh, is it the internal?
Yep.
Okay, I thought it was the external. Okay, you're right. No, so it's the internal. The radius, that's R equals 1.
Yep.
For this object. And then if you apply that same concept to the other vases? Are you getting similar
No.
like simplifications? No.
Well, not that
the
measurement,
length, but the
yeah.
not the length, but the same principle.
I don't know.
Okay.
We don't know yet. I haven't done I don't think we've done the analysis yet to see if that same thing holds true for other vases.
Okay.
It's it's one of the many things that are on the list of things that it may have been done already. I haven't talked with the guys doing that stuff in a couple of weeks now.
Yeah.
But
I can tell you for sure that the radius of the base of that pointed one is not going to match.
True. Yeah, the radius of the foot of that pointy one is not going to match. I agree. Yeah.
Right, but well, I guess the question I'm really asking is, is there some base length in the other vases that will be that you could say, this is the one. This is the one for this vase.
I have the same question. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
I mean,
and then
yeah.
And then the next question is if we can define a bunch of those where you're like, okay, here's this vase, here's this one, and we found the one for each one of these.
Then you compare those.
Compare them, and then can we find out maybe what their unit of measure was? Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's two. There's the two ones that we've looked at and that have been as astonishing as that main one, if not even more. There's two of them, and there's this one, the very thin.
Oh yeah.
Very thin-lipped. This is like the side walls are between 2 and 4 millimeters.
Wow.
In fact, I can feel the groove that's around the inside of this. But this is the translucent one. So it shows the radial traversal pattern. It shows the 1 radian angle. It shows a bunch of different features, just like the other one. And in fact, there's been some geometric reports done on these. I haven't done videos on them specifically yet, but I did include a little bit about them in the video from Danville, where we actually had the original versions of these and we were measuring them and put them on row tabs, and we had vases on them. Dial indicators on them.
Yeah.
And then the other one was this one, the spinner vase.
The spinner.
The spinner's amazing. I'm hard pressed to pick a favorite between these. Actually, I like the thin one just because it's so delicate, and it's amazing that it survived this long. This one's a bit more solid. It has more heft to it. But it spins incredibly well. If you've seen the video, it just spins and spins and spins. And what's so interesting about this is that you want to talk about the same sort of relationships that we see in the other vase. Okay, this thing is full of the radial traversal pattern, as is this one. But what's interesting about this is the geometry of why it spins. So it's actually, see, it's like,
oh yeah, I remember this.
yeah,
Yes.
so it's like it's like this fat little squat looking thing, but it turns out that the base and the way this is defined, the width of it, it's actually 3 circles of the exact same radius, the same size, slightly offset from each other. So you have one that sticks out on this side, one that sticks out on this side, one that sticks out just a tiny bit on the bottom. In fact, it only sticks out like just less than a millimeter. And it's the tip that it forms with that geometric shape that is what lets it spin. So it's this tiny, less than a millimeter tip that of these circles that sticks out, and that's what it sits on and spins perfectly on the bottom. And it turns out that these circles also have a relationship to the height of the vase that's exactly, I think it's phi, or it's phi squared. But it has the exact same, so these significant measurements of the vase are encoded in this thing too. Like it's not an accident. And this thing's so precisely made that you literally sit there and spin it. Like the granite version, it's quite heavy. It just spins and spins and spins. And
in the video, they put it down on the table and he spins it, and he's watching it. It just spins and keeps going. It slows down very slowly.
It's on a granite table. Yeah, it's like a granite vase on a granite table. And even this thing will spin. Like even this plastic one it's made pretty well. I mean, nothing like to the accuracy of the scan limit or anything, but you can spin this. Even the plastic ones will spin. In fact, I've got a back channel with Nick and Alex, and they've got a bunch of these, and they're like spinning them and knocking them into each other and stuff. The plastic, the 3D version,
the plastic ones.
Yeah, the plastic ones.
It's astonishing to me about that one that it sits so perfectly upright. It doesn't. It's not like
it's not overbalanced.
It's not
on
rolling
side.
over to the side of
one
one of the lug handles or something. It's just.
Do you guys see the picture I took of it?
That's an achievement.
Like I have to show it to you here. Well, the people that are actually going to watch this, I'm gonna show you something.
Yeah.
Makes me want to get a potter's wheel. Like I just want to get a potter's wheel and start making some pots.
I mean, this guy, this is it here, right?
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
Just there you go. Like that's
like
fuck off. It's just insane. Like That's what
Yeah.
it's sitting on, and it's just perfectly balanced on that. And that's on a granite surface plate, a surface table that's like 0.4 of a thousandth.
Yeah, it's like an A
four
rating.
tenths of a thousandth. That's flat. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not being held on anything. It's
And
just
the fact that it's just like, look at the top. Look at how level the top is. It's just beautifully. I mean,
yeah. I mean, there's any number of things to talk about with these bloody vases. I mean, the fact that the tops are flat and you can use them as a reference surface. You can mount them on a row tab based on the flat top. Like with this one, we just spun it around, sat it on its top. Because you can measure the top's so flat that it doesn't give you like this run out. If it wasn't flat, you wouldn't be able to measure it would deviate when it rotates.
Yes.
It would wobble.
Yeah.
But the tops and the bottoms of these things are so flat that it doesn't affect it. It's like they're within a thou or so of being perfectly flat, these surfaces. So you can literally use the top and the bottom as a datum, like as a reference point, and then you just mount them based on that, and you're good. It's within the tolerance of kind of the rest of the gear. Like the row tab itself has a run out of about a thou. So
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got a little tiny deviation.
yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, actually, and that's what I liked about that day. I was really happy I went out there for that, and it was I'd like to think it's a realistic sort of nuts and bolts version of precision. Like it's not this esoteric, like, oh, we're doing this computer simulation analysis of a 3D model in software on a mainframe or whatever. And
You're
like,
mounting them in actual tools and putting
dials
dials on them and
right.
spinning them and like watching the dial move.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was cool.
You still get people that go like, "Oh, it's not precise. Look at that dial; it's jumping all over the place." Like it's
it's jumping
those
like
are in
0.5
thousandths or half of a thousandth of an inch, so it's okay,
Yes.
bro. Yeah, you stick your hair in there, it's going to jump quite a way. Like you stick anything that isn't precise in there, it's just going to like go burr and stop.
And that's the other thing is like these are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 years old. How precise were they when they came off of the manufacturing floor?
Right. Yeah, and a lot of them have visual damage and visible damage, and there was a couple that we couldn't actually measure because of damage. We don't know how old they are. Like they could be that old, they could be way older. It's a miracle. Yeah, I mean that's
what I'm saying is that the precision remains.
That's right.
But what we're measuring is very ancient precision. So you don't even know how much precision has been lost because it doesn't take that even on a granite object. It doesn't take a whole lot of rubbing against sand to lose a half of a thousandth of an inch on one part of it.
Yeah.
Again, not all of these things are precise. Like
That's right.
Remember that giant? I mean, that massive chunker down underneath the step pyramid. We like rolled it over. It's like it's part of the lip of the vase, and then this big round piece of the side. I mean, that thing is it's a monster. It's probably 2 inches thick or more.
Yeah.
Heavy, big chunk of what was a massive. I mean, how did you turn that thing? I don't think that one, if it was whole, would show the precision level.
Probably not. I don't know.
These others. It might, but I'm just saying it's
damaged either way.
It's heavily damaged, but
I do make that point. Not everything is that precise. That's right, and that's not what we said. In fact, we measured a couple that were in order. We have a couple of different vases. This one, let me grab it. So this one is like no lug handles, but granite. I think it was granite or basalt. An order of magnitude worse. So where something's like 2 or 3 thousandths, you're talking 20 or 30 or 40 thousandths out on this.
Sometimes your bearings are getting old.
Well, I don't know.
Your bearings are wallowed out a bit.
I don't know. I think there's, and it's something that I've been paying much more close attention to in the last couple of years in museums and stuff, and I have a lot of pictures. Even the last trip to Egypt, I take a lot of attention at what is obviously handmade, because there are handmade hard stone artifacts. Like there are handmade vases and stuff, and you can see. I mean, you can obviously see the ones that are really rough, but they probably also put some effort into a few that you could just look at it and go, I can't really tell, and you probably wouldn't be able to tell until you measured it. But yeah, there's some handmade stuff that's probably reasonably good, but I don't think it's within anywhere close to the precision of the actual precise objects, of which I think there are many, by the way. Lots of the stuff in the museums. And also a lot of the vases that we measured that are in the collections that we have access to right now are very precise. That I don't think you can explain it. Most of them with anything other than machining.
Yeah.
But the point is too that look, our modern tools today, we have very high precision lathes, and then we have low precision lathes.
Yep.
We have bearings that are not as good. The tools are not as rigid. And then the other factor is when your cutting tools get dull, you lose precision. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's a lot of different factors that go into getting the precision. Even if you have the capability and the technology, you're not always going to get it.
Right. No, I agree. And we know they made
depends.
mistakes too. So
you make mistakes.
We see that all over the
go
place.
Out, you get a deviation in some aspect of the machine.
Yeah.
You're not going to get the precision. So,
yeah,
I wouldn't expect them all to be the same.
No.
But it's like Dunn says, it's like we have to explain the
hardest,
most difficult aspects.
That's right. We do have to explain the most difficult aspect. And the fact that we found so many of what I would term the exceptional class of artifacts within a collection of maybe 20 that we've looked at so far.
Right.
It's remarkable.
That means that you can't explain the exceptional stuff by saying it was an accident
or a unicorn, right? Yeah, or it's a
yeah.
fake or whatever. The other ones have better provenance and all that. Yeah, we dealt with the provenance, but I mean, I agree. It's there's a spectrum of them, 100%. And we know that there was definitely mistakes were made. I mean, we have the unfinished box in the museum. We have overcuts on all sorts of stuff, on obelisks, on statues. We have overcuts on the box in the King's Chamber. We got we were looking at in the break. We were looking at some of the Serapeum boxes that have not necessarily mistakes. It's like were they mistakes or were they working with the stone and they were dealing with imperfections in the natural material that they were working with is another part of this. But it's not perfect, but it's still way beyond. My point is, and everyone's. I think our point is that it's beyond. It's beyond. It's beyond dudes banging on them with rocks and sticks and sand.
Yes, it's definitely past that at this point.
That's the point. Like if we can admit that, then I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
Next,
we've moved. Yes,
we've moved on.
Next mystery.
Next mystery. I still get the idea that they were kind of in a hurry. I mean, it's sort of like
a haunting thought.
Yes, because there's like overcuts and like you just get the idea like they're like we've got to get this done.
Yeah.
And then they make these mistakes where the saw gets off and they're like, okay, just throw it to the side. It isn't like they got rid of it, right? It was found.
Yeah.
So it's like they make mistakes. You just toss it to the side. You keep cutting because you're trying to finish this job before you run out of time.
Lands. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, one thing we're not precise on is taking our breaks. Yeah. We have a low precision on this, but it is break time.
All right.
Yeah.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, for the final segment of the fastest vase talk in the history of podcasting.
I love
hour and 45 minutes of vases.
Yes.
Not enough.
Is that all?
Still haven't figured it out.
Yeah. I freaking love this stuff, man. It's great feeling like, we're pushing forward here
Yeah.
I agree.
with this. It should change the conversation. Is there you kind of, I think you kind of hinted that this is my final question on this topic, but you kind of hinted at this, I think, in your latest video. But is there a possibility of getting actual museum pieces to do some of these scans on?
Yes.
Is that being worked on?
Yes. Yeah? Answer is yes. We are on a couple of different fronts, actually. So Chris Dunn has a concept that I'm a big fan of, and that is that, you know, he thinks that, and he's been saying this, certainly it's a part of his new book, which is coming out. I can highly recommend it. I've read it. The Giza, the Tesla connection, comes out, I think, January, February. One of the things that he talks about is that it's time for the Egyptians themselves and the engineers in Egypt to kind of take control of some of their heritage. And I think because in a lot of ways, their own the history of Egypt and this picture we have of what is ancient Egypt is one that to some extent has been dictated to them by external groups, the British, the Americans, the Germans, the French. You know, the Egyptologists as they've stood, and then, you know, Egypt has a chance here to really redefine their own history and take control of it. And I'm happy to say that there's been some progress made on that front, because it's Egyptian engineers who have already been involved with Egypt's with museums in Egypt, and they've done some things in the past, like, you know, like just scanning artifacts with LiDAR for, like, you know, 3D tours where you can look at, like, oh, here's a 3D scan of an artifact and spin it around in a virtual tour or whatever. And it's not particularly accurate. It's like LiDAR scanning that you get on an iPhone or, you know, a handheld LiDAR device. It's not super accurate like a structured light scanner, but they're doing that process already. Like, they've put these objects on tables and they're lighting it and they're spinning it. They're creating models on it. So we've been having some conversations with a few of the universities and the people that are involved in those efforts already and have relationships with the museums, and they're engineers, and they're very interested in the results that are coming out of the project so far. So we're trying to leverage that, and they are making inroads to, like, work with these museums to say, well, let's code back in with structured light scanners. Let's get actual scans. Let's get these, you know, thousandths of an inch or even better resolution scans, and then we can put them out and analyze them and figure out some more things. So that's happening. It's a slow process, but it is happening. And I do think we need to get, as part of this, we want to get Egyptologists on board. I think Egyptologists should be interested in this. At the end of the day, it's, you know, we are going to learn more about the manufacture of these artifacts. At the end of the day, you are doing also digital preservation of these artifacts. Yeah. This is a big selling point. Like, this is, and I know this is also a push with some of these museums. It's like we're literally digitally preserving these artifacts forever, as long as there's a digital record of them. If God forbid something happens to one of these things, you have a digital record of it that is very, very accurate. So you have a record of it. So that's I think that's a benefit, if nothing else, just the fact that you get this digital preservation of these artifacts. That's a benefit. And then, you know, I've been trying to, and as I said before, I had some conversations with the British Museum, and I'm also working with the Petrie Museum to try and get in there. It's just a matter of time, I think, until we can get in there. I know the Petrie Museum does allow this type of work. They're a research museum. They've certainly seemed willing in my engagement with them so far. I was there earlier this year, and really strangely, and I mean, I think honestly just a coincidence, but they happened to be closed for renovation for exactly the 2 or 3 weeks that I was in, the period that I was in the UK. Unbelievable. I actually have pictures of standing out the front of the Petrie Museum. I emailed them back and forth about trying to get in outside of that, and I had some friends who knew them as well that, you just couldn't do it. But I'm definitely going to go back and book research appointments, and they've certainly seemed willing to work with us and they've got a lot of artifacts, not just vases and plates and stuff that Petrie's worked on, but also the drill cores. I want to scan, and I know Alex Dunn's really interested in scanning the drill core. Like, Petrie's core number 7's the main one that everyone's looked at, but if you go through their archives and you look at their collection, they've got a whole bunch of drill cores. And a lot of them, just at least from the photographs, look like they have the same type of deep spiral groove that Petrie's core number 7 does. And I would love to scan those, because I think we can get I mean, I think that mystery's been solved as far as Petrie's core number 7 goes. That was solved with the latex core and all the latex mold and the other work that's done there. But I think there's certainly more cores we could look at and I think analyze using these techniques. But long story short, long story long, it's yes, we're working with museums, and I very much hope that if we get into a couple of museums and we can do this work, that will open the door for the bigger museums, the Met, the big museums in the US, like maybe one day the Cairo Museum. I don't know. Like I would love, that's like the ultimate dream, is
the ultimate goal. Yeah.
What's in the Cairo Museum, because god damn, they've got a lot of interesting stuff in there.
Right. And this is the other thing. If the new Grand Museum would ever open, like supposedly they're going to have a whole bunch of artifacts that haven't seen the light of day. They've been in a basement for 100 years. And that may open up entirely new lines of inquiry on some of this stuff. Like, who knows what they've got.
Can't wait to get in there, man. I'm hoping they're in there when we're there in February
I know.
And in March. But February and March we're going to be in Egypt, and
Yusuf basically destroyed my hopes, because last time we talked to him, he was like, I doubt it.
Well, they're now saying the end of this year. They're saying something like January, February. I mean, they've said this since 2020.
This is what they've been saying.
I know. Trust me, I know.
One of these times it'll be it'll be true.
Well, I've been saying
it on the
tours that I've been doing since 2020. I did one in 2020, 2021, 2022, and then this year. And I was just like, if it's open, we'll go. And like, we're going to go because they said it's open, and it's never been open. And so now I'm just like, look, we're going to the Egyptian Museum.
Yeah.
If the new museum's open, we will definitely go.
Yeah.
If it's open. Now, I can't tell you, is it going to be open? I don't know. But because they've been saying they're going to be fucking open since 2020, and they're not. So, I mean, I know why, right? They're looking for the right moment, and they just haven't had it with COVID, and then this other nonsense that's happening in the region that's unfortunately affecting the region.
Yes. Which
I will tell you, I was just in Egypt. Like, I literally came back, a week and a half ago. I was there for 3 weeks pretty much, in October and November. Wonderful. I mean, it was great. I had a great time. It's still full of tourists. It's dropped down, and like there's been a small drop in tourism, which is good for us because the sites aren't quite as busy. I often describe it as it's gone from 105% to about 92% of capacity. So that's good. But yeah, it was great. I mean, we had a great time, and we're doing it. We're doing it again in February, and then also March because February sold out.
Yeah, right. February is sold out. We couldn't do our extension to Lebanon, we are opening up a second tour.
We are. Yeah, it's going to be great. We're doing basically a carbon copy of the February tour about 10 or 11 days after the February tour ends, and that will be... we've only just decided to do that because, as Russ said, we couldn't do Lebanon's a bridge too far with this current issue, but I mean Egypt's fine. Like Egypt's the peacemaker in this.
Egypt's fine.
Egypt's absolutely fine. There's no issue with going to Egypt, and we decided, we thought, well, do we do another extension instead of Lebanon? We go to Egypt, and we're like, you know what? And then I was talking to Mo, and our Egypt trip in February sold out so quickly. I was blown away by how quickly I didn't expect it to sell. I thought it might sell out, but I didn't think it would sell out in like a week, which is what it did.
A week.
It was unbelievable. And I was like, oh shit. And then a lot of people were like, man, I can't get on. There's like more than 150 people on a wait list. They're like, oh, hopefully somebody cancels. And then, so we're like, well, let's not do an extension. Let's actually just do another trip and try to give a few of these other people on the wait list the chance to go. So that's what we did. We decided we'll just do a repeat of the same trip, same deal, same everything, and we're going to make that available to people on the wait list and patrons and stuff here for about a week or so, and then we'll put the details up publicly. But real easy way to, if you want to hear about it, then just register for the first trip and get on the wait list, and you'll get the email about the next trip, I guess. So
get on the wait list.
Get on the wait list, and you'll get an email.
Get early access to the second trip.
Yeah. Easy. But yeah, it's going to be fun, man. We'll be in Egypt for a while, but it's I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing.
We'll get out to the desert and do some other things in between. Be nice.
Yes. And hey, if you're going on the first trip,
and
it's not enough,
stick around.
Sign up for the second trip also.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I mean, I was just in Egypt, and we did. I mean, I always like to go and have a fair bit of time around the trip where I'm not on the trip, and I can do stuff.
Yeah.
Outside of what is the set itinerary, and then Yusuf and Mo, we go and do stuff. And this last trip, we went out to like the Western Desert for a few days, and it was just wonderful. Like we went to a bunch of sites that I've never seen before that are just off the beaten track. You got to get in 4-wheel drives and stuff to get to. Like some old kingdom, like literally like structures like the Valley Temple that are out there in the Fayum.
Wow.
Like giant megalithic structures that are just vastly ancient, and nobody's barely ever seen them. And it's like this Valley Temple just sitting out there in the, on these hills near the bottom on the western side of Lake Moiris in the Fayum region. And we went out to the Valley of the Whales, and I want to get you guys out there at some point too. We did the Valley of the Whales, which was just astonishing. Spent some time.
I'm pissed off about that. I told you about that, and you went out there.
I didn't know we were.
I got.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, bro. We'll get you there. I'll get you there. That was Mo and Yusuf, not me.
Right. I mean, yeah, I can't wait to see that place.
Yeah, totally worth it. It's good fun, and there's all I'm saying. The point is that Egypt has a lot to offer. And then obviously there's the Red Sea and the nice vacation-y side of it as well. That's good for if people want to spend time and they go diving or whatever it is on the Red Sea or the Mediterranean. I mean, it has all of that as well. So Egypt is cool, man.
It is.
I'm
looking forward to it.
Yeah. It's going to be amazing. All right. Well, we're about out of time here.
Hold up.
Thank you guys so much for supporting the show. I hope you all appreciated the Göbekli Tepe video. We are going to be making more content like that.
That's amazingly well done, by the way. I just want to say that. I love that.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you so much. Like I said in the video, you're a huge inspiration. You've helped us out a lot on that, and of course we've been traveling with you. So but
big thanks, bro.
Yeah,
man.
Much thanks for that. Yeah.
Thanks for ruining my weekends.
Yeah, you guys were like, low effort, no video. I'm like, do some video. Do some video.
Right.
Now you're doing video podcasts. Now you're doing produced videos.
Yeah.
Yes. The exquisite torture
I should never
of YouTube.
have let him meet you. This is the problem. You're a terrible influence, Ben.
Sorry. I think it's great. I just want to see more videos.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and the great thing about doing it is you really absorb the material of the stuff that you're making the video on. It's like we've found, like, we've gone on other people's shows, and like we can really talk about Göbekli Tepe and that site and the way and all the research that's done, because you have to study it to write the script, and so it's actually really helpful.
It's great. I mean, I love that video. It's like I learned stuff watching it. Like you guys did the reading. I can tell that. Like I learned stuff. I took stuff away from it. Like I've been saying some of those same things, but I didn't have the background that you guys obviously had with the like. I know the carbon dating comes from the walls, and that like there's multiple periods of burial here, and it's not. And the people are saying that maybe it wasn't specifically deliberately buried. Now I think it's super interesting. Yeah, and the devil's in the details with these things, as with many of them. And you guys teased that out in that one. I thought it was fantastic. So
awesome, dude.
Really
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Well, we're wrapping it up.
Yep.
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Well, thanks for coming on, Ben. We really appreciate it.
Yes, indeed.
Really do appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
I demand a NASCAR race next Thursday.
Yes. Yeah. We'll do that. Like I like the NASCAR race. That was fun. You guys were kicking butt. We did a little bit of sim racing before this.
Yes, we did.
Yes, bringing the boys into the racing league. This is
Yeah,
going to be interesting.
Yeah, gotta love it.
We're streaming it. I stream it live. I stream on Twitch. You guys streamed it live too on Twitch.
We streamed it. Yes,
you
we
guys
did.
need to check out the Snake Bros Twitch. If you're not following it, follow it. It's good.
Did terrible until NASCAR, but I'm gonna bone up on that.
We're gonna practice.
First time in. There's sim racing's a curve, bro. There's no there's a learning curve. You get there. It's good.
All right. Well,
all right, Ben. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, guys.
And looking forward to all the stuff coming up.
Hell yeah.
And thanks to everybody for supporting the show. Also, make sure you go to Ben's channel. Ben, tell them where they can find him. I'm sure everyone knows, but
unchartedx.com on YouTube. The channel is unchartedx, and all my social medias and stuff are on both of those things. You'll find them beneath the videos, and I occasionally post on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, and all that fun stuff too. But unchartedx.com.
And you occasionally do. You stream to Twitch.
I do stream on Twitch,
your,
yes.
Your video creating process, your research, going through video, all your pictures and stuff. So
That's
like people can join that.
Yeah, twitch.tv/unchartedx. I do stream 2 or 3 times a week. People like it. I mean, it's very casual. I'm doing footage review. Like we've been looking at all the stuff from my recent Egypt trip recently, and then I'm making videos and I'm doing the grunt work. I guess if you're interested in how the sausage is made and interacting with me and talking and asking questions, and we do tons of that. So I do 2-3 times a week. It's a good time, good community.
All right, there you go.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right, folks. Thank you guys. We love you.
Always have.
Always will.
Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work.